The very uprising of our compatriots could result in the mullah regime being completely eliminated.
If the 40 million Azerbaijanis in Iran rise up, no power will be able to stand against them. Azerbaijan is furious with Iran as the war spreads to its borders, and this anger is rapidly taking shape.
And these dishonorable people, those who perpetrated this act of terror against us, they will regret it.
Now they are preparing to go to war with Iran. And this is not only outside the border, but also inside the border. According to Azerbaijani public television, Iran's mullah regime is playing with fire.
If such a variant arises today, if such an incident occurs, if desired, if they take action.
Millions of Azeris in Iran have been waiting for a signal for over 200 years. Now, before examining the panic of the regime's mullahs and the fact that Azerbaijan is the only country that can truly destroy Iran, let's look at Azerbaijan's war preparations on the Iranian border. Because Azerbaijan could join the US-Israel coalition at any moment. The Azerbaijani armed forces are preparing to launch precision retaliatory strikes against Iranian targets within the next 24 hours, using LoRa ballistic missiles provided by Israel. Israeli officials are currently assessing that Azerbaijan could join the coalition and launch an attack on Iran.
According to Israeli sources I have spoken with, Israel believes that Azerbaijan could also join the war. In other words, it could join the coalition by attacking Iranian targets.
According to Israeli intelligence assessments reported by Israel's state channel, Channel 11, Azerbaijan may soon participate in attacks against Iran. However, if this happens, Azerbaijan will not enter the war alone. Turkish Armed Forces Chief of Staff Bayraktaroglu held a telephone conversation with his Azerbaijani counterpart this evening at a time of high tension between Baku and Iran. Turkey has binding defense obligations towards Azerbaijan. Erdogan also had a long phone call with Aliyev after the attacks. This gives us clues that Turkey could also intervene at any moment to support Azerbaijan. On March 6, 2026, Azerbaijan deployed its military equipment, including artillery systems, towards the Iranian border. However, it is not the soldiers on the Azerbaijani border that Iran fears. The real danger lies within. There are 10.5 million Turks living in Azerbaijan, but there have been nearly 40 million ethnic Turks living in Iran for many years. Turks are the second largest ethnic group in Iran.
In fact, no head of state other than me has visited any embassy of Iran. Failing to appreciate this, undermining it, and behaving like lowly ingrates brings honor to no one. And these dishonorable people, those who perpetrated this act of terror against us, they will regret it.
The possibility that Azerbaijan could organize the Turkish population living here in the event of a war and arm them, causing internal unrest within Iran, is keeping the mullahs awake at night. This is because the Turkish population in Iran is scattered across Iran's most critical points, including the state apparatus. This is where Iran's real nightmare lies. Today, an estimated 20 to 30 million Azeri Turks live among Iran's population of 88 million, the country's largest ethnic minority. The vast majority are in the northwest: Tabriz, Ardabil, Urmia, Zanjan. That is, right along the border with Azerbaijan. Why is this existential? There are 5 reasons. First, Azeri Turks are present at every level of the state: the army, intelligence, religious institutions, trade. Even Ali Khamenei was of Azeri origin. There are officials of Azeri origin in the upper echelons of the Revolutionary Guards, in parliament, and in religious institutions. In a moment of rupture, the change of sides could be very rapid. If the regime collapses, which side will these people be on? Second, Tabriz is one of the most active cities in every Iranian protest. The 2009 Green Movement, the 2019 fuel price hike, the 2022 Mahsa Amini events. There is a strong sense of identity and suppressed separatist sentiments. In 2006, an Iranian newspaper published a cartoon disparaging Azeris, which brought hundreds of thousands of people onto the streets in Tabriz. Third, Across the border lies an independent, secular, wealthy Azerbaijan, allied with Israel and the West, a constant alternative model for Iranian Azeris. After the 2020 Karabakh victory, a wave of nationalism strengthened among Azeris in Iran. Fourth, there is a large Azeri diaspora living in Tehran itself. A potential movement is not limited to the border region, it extends to the capital. Fifth, it is one of the most industrialized regions in northwestern Iran. Tabriz's industrial infrastructure, textile production, automotive sector. The breakaway of this region would be an economic disaster. And Iran bombed a civilian airport right next to this sensitive region, in Nakhchivan. The timing could not have been worse. This is one of the most dangerous moves threatening Iran's internal integrity. As a result, Tehran's greatest fear has been triggered. If events completely spiral out of control, tens of millions of Azerbaijani Turks in northern Iran could switch sides. And this could spell the end of the regime. Nazim Kaferov, a professor of Azerbaijani Turkish, explained why Azerbaijan is angry with Iran. For 30 years, Iran has acted as a kind of economic, political, psychological, and, in a sense, military lifeline for Armenia, which occupies 20% of Azerbaijani territory. Armenia, aided by Tehran, has completely destroyed 65 of the 67 mosques in Azerbaijan, which is Iran's religious and sectarian ally, and has used one as a barn. While Azerbaijan was fighting a 44-day war, Iran provided passage for Russian weapons to be transported to Armenia. While the Azerbaijani army was liberating its territories, the Iranian army effectively obstructed Azerbaijani soldiers. After the victory in the war, Iran attempted to support the separatists in Karabakh, namely the Azerbaijani PKK, with trucks, but these trucks were blocked by the Azerbaijani state. After the victory, Iran conducted 4 military exercises on the Azerbaijani border in 3 years to intimidate Azerbaijan, and frequently stated this during that period. Furthermore, Iran has openly opposed the opening of the Zangezur corridor and continues to pursue this policy. So, what has Azerbaijan done in the 2 Iran-US plus Israel wars that have taken place in the last year? Azerbaijan invited Masoud Pezeshkian, the newly elected president of Iran, to the country twice and hosted him at the highest level. During the first 12-day war, not a single shot was fired from Azerbaijan into Iran. Although there were those who wanted to pressure Azerbaijan to do so, Azerbaijan clearly refused. According to Nazim Kaferov, all the news reports claiming that Azerbaijan supported Israel against Iran in that war are false and provocative, with no information or evidence to back them up. Iran is currently squeezed on 3 fronts at once. From the south, bombing by the US and Israel, no navy, 86% of missile capacity is ineffective, hundreds of thousands of soldiers trapped underground, nuclear facilities damaged. From the west, NATO shot down an Iranian missile in Turkish airspace. Britain sent a destroyer, France sent an aircraft carrier. 3 European powers have threatened military action. From the north, Azerbaijan is fully prepared for combat. Israeli technology, Turkish support. The right to retaliate is reserved. And underlying all this is the deepest crack in Iran's internal structure. Tens of millions of Azeri Turks. Anger at the regime. Economic collapse. A 200-year-old wound of division. Trump's strategy should be read in this context, calling on Iranians to take back your country, messaging the IRGC to lay down your arms, unite with patriots. The possibility of ground operations by Kurdish groups, the systematic bombing of Basij offices and IRGC headquarters, destruction from the air plus collapse from within, plus pressure from the north. Within this triple vice, Iran's room for maneuver is shrinking by the hour. And the Nakhchivan attack marks the moment when Iran added the northern front to this equation with its own hand. Turkmenchai's 200-year-old wound is bleeding once again on the battlefield of 2026. But this time, the powers at the table are very different. Russia, which divided Azerbaijan in 1828, is no longer on the scene. Turkey, Israel, and the US have taken its place. And these powers know Iran's ethnic fault lines within its internal structure very well. One more mistake by Iran could trigger a storm from the north, and this storm could be much more destructive than the US bombardment in the south, because Azerbaijan is not an ordinary country. It is a military structure equipped with Israel's most advanced air defense systems and strengthened by Turkey's military power and combat experience. Azerbaijan is one of Israel's largest oil suppliers, accounting for approximately 40% of its total oil imports. Israel, in turn, is Azerbaijan's largest source of weapons. A $4.8 billion defense package, Iron Dome air defense, Harop kamikaze drones, Orbiter tactical UAVs, Laura ballistic missiles, Barak 8 air defense system. Azerbaijan is one of the first countries outside the US to possess Iron Dome. There is regular intelligence sharing between the two countries, especially regarding Iran. Iranian officials have been saying for years that Azerbaijan has become Israel's spy base in the Caucasus. This is not entirely paranoia, but a real strategic concern. The Turkish side is equally strong. One nation, two states. This is not just rhetoric, but military reality. Bayraktar TB2 drone fleet, Aselsan electronic warfare systems, joint exercises, NATO-style training, Turkish military advisors. This synergy was proven on the ground during the 2020 Karabakh War. Turkish TB2s and Israeli Harops, working together, ended 30 years of Armenian occupation in 44 days. The 2020 Karabakh War was the first major test of this synergy, and the result was surprising. Israel and Turkey, two countries that normally have tense, even hostile relations with each other, formed a de facto military alliance behind the scenes around the common ground of Azerbaijan. This triangle, Turkey, Israel, Azerbaijan, is not a formal alliance. There is no formal pact, no joint command structure, but there is a synergy at work on the ground. And this synergy is creating a vice for Iran. In the Karabakh War, Russian-made Pantsir air defense systems were systematically destroyed by drones. In 2023, Azerbaijan took the rest of Karabakh completely. Russia just watched, unable to intervene. So Iran violated Turkey's airspace within 48 hours and bombed the civilian airport of Turkey's closest ally. The opposing force? Israeli technology plus Turkish experience plus an army that has won 2 wars plus the Iron Dome shield. Underestimating this equation is a fatal mistake. It may seem interesting to you, but the reality is bitter for Iran. The Turkey-Israel-Azerbaijan triangle forms a triple vice for Iran. Attacks from Israel and the US in the south, Turkey's NATO umbrella in the west, and Azerbaijan's Israeli-backed military capacity in the north. Iran's simultaneous attacks in all directions tighten this vice rather than breaking it. However, while Azerbaijan's stance is clear regarding the actions of the Iranian government in the Azerbaijan-Armenia war and the last 2 Iran-US plus Israel wars, 4 UAVs from Iran are attacking civilian targets, including a school in Nakhchivan. And this situation is now at its final stage. In the current geopolitical landscape, military planners have several possible scenarios on the table. However, each of these options leads to a structural impasse and strategic disaster for the Tehran administration. The first possibility that comes to mind is always the implementation of classic diplomatic processes. But the moment the debris from those missiles hit the ground, that threshold was already crossed. The second and more likely scenario is a limited retaliatory operation targeting specific objectives, which is one of the most probable scenarios currently facing decision-makers. The third scenario, a harsher and more powerful possibility that would completely change the dynamics, is the launch of a limited ground operation. Military activity in the region indicates that this move could become a reality on the ground at any moment. The consequences of a possible ground operation or intense air campaign carry the potential to trigger the fourth scenario, which is the most destructive. And this ground operation does not have to originate from Azerbaijan, as Azerbaijan is also highly unlikely to use this option. If military incidents on the border get out of control, millions of South Azerbaijanis living in northwestern Iran could throw their weight into the equation. This massive population has been crushed for years by economic crisis, heavy sanctions, and harsh policies. There is a huge wave of anger against the regime that has built up and is ready to explode. A potential wave of civil disobedience starting in the streets of Tabriz could quickly mobilize and turn into organized resistance. When the wheels of the system stop turning in the streets, chaos begins. Iranian security forces, militia structures, or the Revolutionary Guards will want to intervene very harshly in this situation. However, their most elite forces have already been shifted to the southern front. The remaining forces are waiting in shelters against possible external attacks. A major wave of internal uprising in the north would directly create panic in the corridors of Tehran. It is militarily unsustainable for a state to fight its own people while simultaneously trying to defend its borders. While attempting to create an illusion of power beyond its borders, the mullah's regime directly triggered the massive demographic fault line within, namely the pent-up anger of millions of South Azerbaijani Turks. The equation on the table is now quite clear. While the Iranian administration amasses forces at its borders and anticipates a military escalation, the real major geopolitical risk is rapidly growing in its own streets and the corridors of state institutions. The deep social fracture created by years of harsh policies has the potential to turn into a chaos environment that could cross borders with just a small spark. So, what are your thoughts on this matter? Please share your thoughts in the comments.
Thank you for staying through to the end of this video. We believe that your life is blessed and transformed. See you in our next video. If you have not subscribed, do so by clicking on the subscribe button, like, tell us your thoughts in the comment section, and we shall see how we get back to you. Follow us on our social media, and God is set to bless and lift you